Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lene Green, and I am a neural resource facilitator with Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa. And thank you for coming to my presentation, The Journey Continues, a telltale discussion about embracing career pathways after brain injury. I am here with Nathan Becker and Megan Schmelzer. And so we are going to talk about their journey to employment after they obtained their brain injury and see how things went for them and have a discussion around the processes of getting back to work and once they got back to work, what life was like for them. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so let's just start. If you would, I would love for you guys to, tell us about yourselves. You're welcome to reveal as much information as you like.
Sounds good.
So, who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Okay.
My name is Megan Schmelzer. I'm 34 years old, and I grew up in Ankeny, Iowa, where I am currently living with my husband and my two children. Brooklyn is 8 and Aiden is 4. I graduated at the University of Iowa, or Northern Iowa, pardon me, with a double major in elementary and middle school elementary education, and I specialize in both literacy and social studies and math. I have a dog that I adore, and I love being around kids. I absolutely adore it, and I'm grateful to be here today.
Awesome, thank you.
I am Nathan Becker. I'm 39 years old. I have 2 kids. Max is 10 and Blair is 3 years old. Both June birthdays, about 10 days apart, so that's wonderful. Married to my wife, for this was our 15th year, so that's pretty nice. I went to University of Northern Iowa in 2001 to 2005, so
Go
that
Panthers.
was good. And teaching also. So I've been a 3rd grade teacher, kindergarten teacher, 5th grade teacher. Then I did a half a year just recently for middle school teaching. So wide range of teaching.
That's awesome. So if I could ask, about when was it that you suffered from your brain injury?
Yeah. I fell on February 7th, 2020, literally 1 month before COVID hit and everything shut down. Honestly, COVID was nothing compared to the brain injury, and because that was my world. Like, brain injury stopped everything. I was walking into school one day. It was a Friday, and I had just gotten out of my car and taken maybe 2 steps, and I hit a patch of ice, and there was nothing I could do. My head took full impact. I have no idea if I lost consciousness or not. I just remember kind of waking up and being cold and seeing the sky and being in a lot of pain, and was able to walk in to the school and get to the school nurse. And the school just didn't know what to do. It was a mess. I could tell directly after it happened that I wasn't okay, but I couldn't tell how. I couldn't tell what was wrong. I couldn't tell. It just, when it happened so fast, like, I gained consciousness back. I wasn't sure. I was dizzy. I was off. I had students coming in. It was just one of those things where I knew I was really, really hurt. I just wasn't able to figure out how.
That's pretty intense. There was a lot of elements that were going there. And I think what was really strong about that was, there has been so much talk around COVID and, your statement, COVID is nothing compared to that brain injury, really speaks volumes to, the impact that brain injury does have on individuals and, why it's so important for us to have these conversations. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nathan, what about you?
My accident happened on March 10th of 2019. It was a Sunday. I was actually skipped church, was probably the first time I've ever done. My wife went to church and I went out to cut trees, and a tree branch rolled over and hit me in the head and knocked me out. And my father-in-law was with me. He performed the Heimlich maneuver on me and kept me alive, I guess, to start with. And they flew a helicopter in from St. Luke's and Cedar Rapids, and they saved my life there. It was actually the brain surgeon's first patient that he had that day. So, since he became a doctor there. So that was pretty cool. I was in and out of a coma for a couple weeks, and I don't remember anything for a whole month. So a whole month of my life was just skipped by. I remember playing tic-tac-toe with my son Max after about a month. I couldn't move my right side of my body, my right leg, my right hand or arm or anything for probably about 4 months. It was off and on. I stayed at St. Luke's for that month. I was in coma. That one more month, I started therapies, and I couldn't speak either. I had a little tube in my throat. I had to like pinch something to make me be able to verbalize just a little bit, but otherwise it was all hands up or thumbs down. Just no talking, which was not very much fun either. But
No.
yeah, not being able to move the right side of my body really was not fun. I remember being on that bed and having to go to the bathroom a lot, and this was kind of funny, kind of silly too, but having somebody else have to go to the bathroom for me, it's just, that was not fun at all. And remember that. And I remember one day I was at therapy and my arm moved like this. This was the first or second month in St. Luke's, and my hand moved like this. So obviously barely moving, but that was like the biggest deal ever. So that was kind of exciting, but kind of like, really?
Yeah.
But then I went after a month. My wife got permission to drive me to Ankeny, and we went to On With Life, and I was at On With Life for another 2 months, and eventually got moving and got obviously I was rolled around in a wheelchair a lot, and eventually got moving and got back home and stuff like that. So yeah.
Mm. That's a very powerful story too. Thank you so much for sharing that. When I was listening to you, I kept thinking about like that balance of life, right? Like, and how oftentimes, like, even when bad things happen, something beautiful kind of peeks its head through. And it's just that those beautiful moments that are really important to help us kind of keep pushing and keep us motivated. And so you mentioned your hand like barely moving, but that was a big deal. So looking back on it now, with you making so much progress, it may feel like it was something silly, but that was that peak of light, that
Yeah.
allowed that balance for you, and the tic-tac-toe with your son, and making history with the surgeon and being the first surgery of the day. There's some really cool moments in that, and so I appreciate you sharing both sides of that for us, telling us about your experience.
Yeah, it was before COVID too, so that was nice. My family could come visit, and I had lots of visitors throughout my time and stuff. So that was helpful also.
Yes, when life was normal, as they
That's right.
say,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I'm curious, about how long do you think your recovery process took before you even considered getting back into work?
Okay. I would say my recovery process isn't over. I would say I'm learning every day how to manage my disabilities. I can't really see out of my left eye anymore. My memory is really poor for short-term memory. I have a lot of dizziness and headaches. And there's a lot of frustration for me with being someone where life used to be really easy for me. I used to not have to struggle with day to day. And so I think learning how to deal with my new self. Because really, like, a brain injury is, you're a new person now. You're not who you were before your brain injury. So I feel like as I'm getting back into work, I'm having to relearn how to do things that used to be easy for me, or learn how to do things and accommodate for myself that I never had to do before, and ask for help in places that the old me could have done by myself. But for medical therapy, my therapy was kind of issue. I had a lot of issue with work comp. So because I fell at school, work comp was involved. And so I had absolutely no say in who my doctors were, who my therapists were, any of that. And I would say that was absolutely horrible, because I knew myself more than anybody, and work comp has a bad reputation for being unkind and not listening to you. And in my case, that's 100% true. The first doctor they sent me to tried to assault me, and no one would believe me. And so when I requested another doctor, they wouldn't let me have another doctor because I made a complaint to the first one and reported him. And so from day one, the first doctor's appointment that I was forced to go to after my brain injury, I didn't even get to pick which hospital or which doctor or anything, because it happened at school, was the man that tried to assault me. And I was so bad with that brain injury. I was unconscious, like I couldn't really tell what was happening, but I was smart enough and aware enough to be able to get out of a horrible situation. And then for me, it took work comp almost 2 months to get me therapy and to get me help. And so for 2 months, I was at home and I was dizzy, and I was telling work comp and my nice doctor that they put me with that I wasn't okay. And I asked multiple times, can I please, please, please go to my doctor? Can I please get help? I'm not okay. And so they would not do anything until they could get me into a neurologist to really determine if I was hurt or not. And with getting into specialties in Des Moines, it was a 2-month wait. And after meeting him, then they put me at On With Life, which is a brain rehabilitation center in Ankeny. And since I live in Ankeny already, I was allowed to go home each day, which was huge for me. I got to go home and be with my babies. But I was there every morning from like 8 a.m. till noon, and we did physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. I mean, walking, bending, moving, brain puzzles, just anything you can think of. It was all day long. And then because of COVID, On With Life had a major outbreak, one of the first ones with COVID. And so they completely shut down, and they moved all our therapies online to try to do via Zoom, which for brain injury, recent brain injury people, like, computers are the worst thing ever. Like, being online is the worst thing ever. So I was not able to continue therapy through them because they were all online due to they have inpatient and outpatient, right? So I was considered outpatient because I got to go home. So they couldn't bring me in anymore for therapy because I was out in the world, and you couldn't risk the inpatient. And I understood that completely, like keeping people safe. So I had to then wait about another month or two for other physical therapy places and other speech therapy places to open. And the difficult thing is they couldn't get me in one location. So I had vision therapy in West Des Moines, and I had speech therapy at the hospital, Mercy, and then I had physical therapy in Ankeny. So my mom basically had to drive me everywhere for a long time. And I kept doing therapies until December. And then at that point, I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I can't keep doing this. There's absolutely no progress. The doctors agreed, and we suspended it, and then declared that I was permanent in January. So about a year is really how long it takes. Yeah, medically a year.
Okay. There were a lot of roadblocks there, just listening, to your experience. And I'm sorry you had to endure those on top of, trying to heal as best as you can, and recover, and COVID and all of the things. So a lot of roadblocks, but you're here. Yeah. So I love it. It's great. Again, that's that peak of light for me. I love to see the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. So yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah,
Nathan,
it was a horrible experience, honestly.
yeah,
And I think if my school district, my employer, and work comp would have really listened to me and allowed me to have a voice in my treatment, I
Yeah.
think my experience could have been completely opposite. Like, I really feel like my brain injury was a really bad experience just from beginning to end. And so if I can, through this conversation, prevent what happened to me to someone else, like I want to do that, because a lot of things went wrong from the instant to the end.
I'm so sorry. And I really appreciate your full transparency
Yeah.
with what happened. And this is a perfect example of why advocacy
Mhm.
is so important. Um, and when there are the unknowns, like you said, your experience with work comp, there were a lot of different scenarios where you worked hard to self-advocate and say, look, please let me do this, and those restrictions were placed upon you. And so that advocacy and support group, or supports, I should say, to kind of push is really important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, the other part is being believed.
Yes.
I felt like anytime I was speaking to someone, they were assuming I was lying. They were assuming that because physically I looked okay, right? You see me, you don't see a brain injury. It is not visual. And first appearances say everything. I was getting judged by the way I look. I was not getting judged on what I was saying and what I was experiencing. And if someone would have actually listened to me, if someone really would have allowed me to have a voice in my treatment, I think maybe then I could have improved. Because with a brain injury, your best moment of improvement is like as soon as injury happens, right? My treatment was delayed, and then it got started, and then it was delayed, and then it was moved to all these places, and it was with subpar doctors. Like, I did not have good doctors. I had great On With Life. They were wonderful, but I got them for this much of a time. And so I think if I would have really gotten help right away, like you're supposed to, and I would have gotten to stay with quality care, we might have be having a different discussion versus permanent disability.
I think that's a very strong point.
Yeah.
And yeah, a very strong point there. Nathan, what about you? I know you kind of mentioned how it was several months at the hospital, but then you read On With Life. But about, what do you feel like your timeline was as far as recovery, and before you even thought about going back to work?
Based off of Megan's story, my story is a lot better, I guess, but it's just sad to say that though. But my work insurance actually covered everything, I guess. I don't know. So that was really nice. I was talking with Megan earlier, and I had like sick time where they covered me and paid me too. So I had like 120 days worth of that, plus some that other teachers volunteered me for. So that was really nice. So my school district really paid a lot and done a lot for me. So that kept me out or paid for stuff for about a year or so. So I got out of St. Luke's after that 2 months, and I went to On With Life for 2 months. I was home around July, middle of July, something like that, because insurance ran out, I guess, whatever. I was ready to go home though. I was tired of it, but it was really nice. But yeah. Anyways, so then I started physical therapies, occupational therapies, and speech therapies at St. Luke's. Again, I went back there, so I drove about an hour each time for that, but it was really nice there too. Then, so I didn't do anything until my time ran out at school, then I think I had like a month left, and I went back and tried to sub teach, kind of help teach. So it was about a year out, and I started going back in the classroom a little bit just until all my days ran out. Then I just subbed after that, just periodically once in a while. That first year out, I didn't sub a whole lot, but got in the classroom some. Then obviously summer got here, and did physical therapies and that stuff at St. Luke's for about a whole year. So I needed it. And I could see improvements from first day till the end. And I mean, I couldn't see it day to day, but it was there. But then that next whole school year, I sub periodically once in a while. I mean, sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Whenever they needed me, I went in. Then this past fall, I actually got a teaching job because teachers are running out. I mean, a lot of schools need them and stuff. So that helped me, I guess, but they didn't have me come back though for this spring. So I'm subbing again, but I mean, I'm still involved and still doing things at least.
That's awesome. That's good. Okay. So I'm curious, both of you were talking about your time as you were going through therapy. You mentioned On With Life and some other spaces. I would love to know, while you were there and you were going through your therapy, what was it about the facilities that went well? What was it that you felt, as far as like helping you with making that progress, or your experience, either one, what went well for you?
I would say the therapists were really fantastic at On With Life. The
Mhm.
amazing thing about On With Life is all your therapies and everything are happening in kind of like this big open area. And so your physical therapist and your speech therapist might be doing something with you at the same time. So like you have a team, and that team is collaborating, and you're seeing other patients there that are trying to do the same thing that you are, and you're supportive of each other. And for me too, I was classified a moderate brain injury. I was not in the hospital, and I didn't have to do inpatient therapy. So seeing people and how severe it could be, it kind of gave me some gratefulness to not stay in the angry stage or anything like that, knowing that I had more function than many people also get to do. So I would absolutely say the patients and the therapists, I think, were the guiding light um, at On With Life for sure.
Okay. Nathan, would you say that, your experience at On With Life was similar as far as that collaboration and teamwork?
Oh, definitely. The therapists were all just wonderful. And they were really nice about implementing everything that I was a part of. Like they knew I was a teacher, so they tried to have me teach them a couple lessons, and they knew I was a basketball coach, so I got to try to play basketball or shoot baskets. So they made it real for me too.
Yeah.
And then just doing the extra things that they put on. Like we went to a zoo one day, so that was kind of cool. And just their weekend things, they usually had something special on Saturdays and different games we played and stuff like that. So yeah, On With Life was really nice.
Yeah, amazing. I would highly recommend
Oh
that
yes.
facility, and just express my gratitude to everyone there for how
Yeah.
they treated me as a person, number one. And
Yes.
then they were on my team, which is huge.
Sure. And Megan, I'm sure that was a relief
Oh,
after going from what you were dealing with before. There was a lot of pain and trauma and a lot of hurt, and to
yeah.
be able to, thankfully have a what sounds like a 180.
Yeah, they were fabulous.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Did you guys notice, or did you guys have any challenges, not necessarily with staff, but in your therapy, in your recovery process? Were there any challenges that you felt like you were enduring that was kind of wearing on you at all?
For myself, I wasn't necessarily prepared for how tired I would be all the time. And so when you have a brain injury, and my neurologist kind of explained it to me, you lose your ability to store energy. So like once you're tired, there's nothing you can do about. Like you're just falling asleep. There's nothing you can do. You can't push yourself hard to get through it, which I am stubborn and I am a go-getter, and I had things to do. I didn't want to sleep all the time. And so when I was going through my therapy, all I would do basically is do therapy and sleep and therapy and sleep. And so the struggle for me was, I'm not being a good mom. I'm not being a good wife. I'm not seeing my kids. Nathan had mentioned too, like he has no memories of that time period. Like I have no memories of that time period. All it seems like is I was at the on with life or I was sleeping. It could have been one day. I don't know. It's just all your brain can do because it's healing and you're trying to do all these therapies to get parts back. It's just exhausting, and it's tired that you have never felt before. I think I was like, gosh, I did the math one time, and I think during the therapies, I was awake for like 6 hours a day and sleeping the rest.
Okay. So your challenges were really just
being a person.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Nathan, what about you?
I would agree, just being a person in general. I wanted to be able to get up and walk around. That was probably the biggest thing in my life, just being able to get around. I had to result in having somebody else push me around. Nice thing is, once I got on with life, it was nice to be able to be pushed around outside in their garden area. And my aunt like pushed me around at St. Luke's at the hospital. So, I mean, it was nice. I had an option to be able to get around, but just that was the biggest thing, just not being able to get around myself.
Sure. Okay.
You lose your independence. And that's really hard as an adult, to have to depend on someone to drive you, to have to depend on someone to help you with your medication. Like it's awful, like to have to be cared for.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely see that being a lot, and knowing that, it was this way and then boom, it's, here we are. So you all had your experiences with your recovery. You had, your medical recovery. So Nathan, you were talking about how, you, after going through your recovery and your therapy, that you started off kind of with subbing and that sort of thing. But I'm just curious from both of you, and Nathan, if you want to start, you can. Like, how do you know that you yourself was ready to go back to work?
I guess there's really no way to say I knew I was ready. I just felt I was tired of sitting at home, just sitting around doing nothing. So I just had that mindset that I wanted to go do something. So once in a while I would sub, and that would kind of make me happy for the most part for some of the time. And then I just had to get back in it this past fall. So just mainly to have something to do.
Okay. Did you miss it at all? Was there anything that you missed?
Oh yeah, I just missed being around people and missed being around the kids and seeing how they would learn, and just yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Megan?
I would agree with what Nathan said. It's almost like your days no longer have a purpose. And so you want to feel like you're still contributing to your
Mhm.
household or to your family. Or for
Definitely.
me, I've always wanted to do a job, and probably why I picked teaching, where I made a difference every day. And the mental health struggle of having a brain injury is so hard. And being home and just going to therapy every day takes a toll. And there's a point where you say, I'm ready to try life again, like sink or swim. We've done as much therapy as we could possibly do. It's time to go back and give it a shot and see how this goes. In my case, I went back with medical restrictions that the school was not able to necessarily accommodate. And so as a classroom teacher, I have 27 kids in a class is where I was at. And so my restrictions were to be with small groups of kids because the movement of kids and the noise of the school and trying to read and track and think and remember was really, really hard. So my doctor wanted me to start with small groups of kids instead of a full classroom. So I was not allowed to go back to my classroom, which was incredibly hard. And so in my case, I was cleared in January to go back as a small group teacher, and the school was required to find a position for me. They didn't. They just didn't respond to the doctor's notes. They didn't respond to my emails or text messages or phone calls to my principal saying, "Hey, can I come back? Can I do intervention? Can I read with kids? Can I do something?" But they didn't respond. And I think at this point, because I got hurt on work, like because work was responsible for my fall, they knew this was going to become a legal thing. And so they automatically thought, we don't want to deal with her. Like, she's a problem. She's the scarlet letter. When really, if they would have talked to me, I just wanted to be purposeful again. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be back with people, like what Nathan said. I just wanted to be back with people. And so they did not ever call me back until, with teachers, we get a contract every year, right? Our job is year to year. And in May, contracts come out. And you are legally bound to get a contract every year unless you've been written up for a reason, for doing something illegal or not following the ethics of teaching. I was never written up. I got hurt. But I did not get a contract in May. And at that point, a lawyer had to get involved in order to even allow me to step foot back on school property. In January too, I was told, like, you're not allowed to even step foot on the property. I wasn't, like, my kid, I taught at one school in Ankeny and my kid went to another school in Ankeny, and I wasn't allowed to pick her up because I wasn't allowed to be on Ankeny property. And like, as a classroom teacher too, thousands and thousands of dollars of my personal teaching materials were in my classroom, and I wasn't allowed to go get them. Like, I literally was like, I don't know. So it took a lawyer getting involved in Ankeny not giving me a contract for no reason. I wasn't written up. I didn't do anything wrong. I literally walked in the parking lot to get me back. And they called me the day after my lawyer called them and said, "Hey, congratulations, we found a job for you. You're going to be an interventionist back at the same school you were at." And I showed up the next day because they told me, "Hey, come the next day at 8 a.m. You're going to meet with your principal. He's going to have everything ready for you." And my principal didn't even know I was coming when I showed up the next day.
Oh my.
Like, I showed up for his office for our 8 a.m. meeting and he didn't know I was coming. And I was like, this is the biggest load of bullshit. Like, this is crap. This is horrible. Who treats people like this? They didn't have a classroom for me. They had no idea what job HR was talking about. They had no idea I'd been hired back. They had nothing for me. Literally, the school wasn't even called.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, what not to do is my story.
That's insane. The lack of communication and the
Respect,
reactive responses. Yeah, it was very
compassion, respect. Like, I'm a person and I had my life flipped upside down, and I don't get to be who I was anymore because now I have disabilities, and they were responsible for that. Like, the least they could have done was ice their parking lot, like put salt down, and then treat me like a person.
Because that's all any of us want at the end of the
Yeah.
day when we go through things. We just want to be treated like humans, and
Yeah.
that's who we are. So
Mhm.
I totally connect with that. Oh man. So thinking about that, so Nathan, did you have any restrictions, or did the doctor say, hey, you can only work with this group? Just kind of like what Megan was saying, how she had those restrictions set in place. Did you have any of that too?
That right when I went back before my contract was all done and out, so it was about a year out from when I had my accident. I was only sent in for half a days, and I had to have a microphone. So they provided that stuff for me and got it, and it worked out okay. But I was only guaranteed half a days and stuff. So they worked with me really well, though.
Awesome. Okay. That's good. I'm glad they were able to work with you.
Yes.
Now, did you guys, so there are agencies out there that can kind of help with the return to work process, or there's programs like Discovery where, if they need to help with maybe creating a position for you or to venture out into self-employment, those sorts of things. Did either of you ever work with an organization or an agency in your area to kind of help you with finding your way back to where you are now as far as employment goes?
I did, yes. But it's kind of like, okay, so I'll just explain the situation. So, because I went back to work in May, I was only guaranteed that 1 month of work, right? Because then it's the summer. And then throughout the summer, Ankeny told me, you have a job, you have a job, you have a job. And then my settlement date was given. And with the settlement, it wasn't settlement with Ankeny, it is settlement with work comp. Because once you're declared permanently disabled, your case is closed. Work comp wants to close it. They want to make whatever settlement it is, and they want out. And because my employer was also wanting out, they jumped in on the settlement meeting. And so throughout that process, they told me I had a job, and then they actually fired me at my settlement meeting. They said we were parting as friends, but however, they didn't have any position for me. And so after that occurred, I had to figure out what am I going to do now? Like, what am I going to do now that I am no longer employed by Ankeny Schools, but I have 2 kids and we are a 2-income household, like most people are today, right? Life is expensive. And so I needed to figure out a way of how I was going to help support my family. And it needed to be something that was comparable to what my paycheck was. So I worked with an organization in Des Moines called Vocational Rehab.
Sure.
And to work with vocational rehab, you have to have, it's an application process. So you have to go to a training, you get assigned a case manager, you then have to provide all your documentations that you have a disability, and then they have to reach out to your doctor and you have to get approved. And then from there, they ask you what do you want to do. And for me, I knew I had to teach. Like, I was the little girl that played school every single day. And I would, at back to school shopping, I would, like, with those flyers, I would design what kind of school backpack I was going to have and which supplies. So I was meant to be a teacher. So at vocational rehab, I told them that I wanted to tutor because of my work restrictions. I said, so if the school district will not work with my disability, I'm going to do it for myself. I'm going to accommodate myself. This is what teachers do every day. We accommodate for kids. I'm going to do it for myself. And so I've worked with vocational rehab because I wanted to open my own tutoring business, and I have. They have a small business sector of vocational rehab where a business specialist is helping me get my business established, help me make financial decisions, help me understand the business side where I have the teaching education. They've also helped me with some assistive technology because of my eyesight and not being able to see a lot of things on the computer. And I'm really grateful. I own a business now called the Little White Schoolhouse, and we tutor anyone that needs help in education, preschool through adults. And I opened October 1st, 2021. And in 5 months, we have 21 teachers that work with me and over 50 kids. And we're getting ready to move into a 4,500 square foot building where we're going to offer classes and activity groups and mental health support and camps and anything just to educate anyone is really where I'm at, to love the differences of people and support them.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
I hope you feel very proud because I am definitely proud of you.
Thank you. Like,
Um,
I want to be like, watch me, Ankeny Schools. You made a mistake firing me. I'm still valuable with a brain injury.
And what I love is that you continue to see
Yeah.
that, even when you were facing adversity, you continued to see your worth. And so, you brought yourself here. And
Yeah.
I love that Voc Rehab was able to assist you in this process and that you're doing so well. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Nathan, did you work with any agencies at all? Because it sounded like the school system was pretty supportive of kind of bringing you back and, helping you out through, or not helping you out, but helping with getting you back into the classroom. So did you ever have to work with any agencies?
I looked into it a little bit, but I knew I wouldn't necessarily need it because the districts did work with me really nicely. So in the future here, I might possibly do it just to see if there's other options for me. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do in the future though. So they might give me options at least.
Well, and they have tools to help you with that.
Uh-huh.
So like they just have tools of talking with you and getting to know you and helping you decide what works with your disability. And they also have like relationships with different partners and businesses that know how to work with brain injury survivors.
Okay.
And so in my case, I didn't need help with that part of their services because I knew exactly what I wanted to do and I had a plan. I just needed help finding the right resources to make that plan put in action. But I know I only used a small part of their services when they have a whole lot more to offer.
Okay, that's awesome. So again, Nathan, if you do get to a space where you're wanting to connect with an agency organization, maybe someone is watching us today that may be able to reach out. So that would be pretty fantastic. Otherwise, Megan, thanks for that, for that extra piece, just to kind of share. So you talked about, Megan, how there was this process and you had to fill out all this paperwork and those sorts of things. How frustrating was that for you? And were there any other frustrations that you experienced during your process of getting into your self-employment?
My frustration was people that work with disabilities sometimes don't accommodate for those disabilities. So my frustration with vocational rehab, their hearts are in the right place. 100% their hearts are in the right place. They're amazing people. But every single piece of paperwork they've given me, I cannot see. I cannot read it because the font is too small and the pages are too busy. And educational government agencies are like notorious for cramming as much crap on one page as possible. It's printing budget, right? And so they keep sending me all these paperwork things to fill out on the computer, which I can't see very well, and on teeny tiny font, and then emailing me computer instructions on if I want to blow them up. I'm 34. Like, I got some tech savviness to me. The issue isn't me blowing it up on the screen. The issue is how the document is formatted. Because when you have a brain injury, it's not necessarily that I can't see the words on the page. It's that my eyes aren't converging right in order to put them aligned enough to see the words on the page. So the amount of times I've had conversations with vocational rehab going, I cannot read this. And they send me the same document or they send me a different document that's worse. I'm like, no, for real. Like, you work with people with disabilities. This has too much print. It's way too small. I cannot read it. And so I think that's really frustrating because I'm like, if they can't figure out, how is anyone else going to figure it out who doesn't have training in disabilities? It was frustrating.
Sure. I mean, I can see that, and I think your example really points out the need for the system of how things work.
Yeah.
To be amended, right? Because like you said, their hearts are in the right place. Like based on where you are, like you had a good support team to get you where you are. And it's those systems that, they have to follow that was creating that frustration for you. And so it would be frustrating for anyone, of course. And I think, there are conversations about making these system changes. And I know that they're having these conversations at the state level, and I'm sure like your case manager can get into that, but I know that they're working to fix those things. So
And I know too, like the paperwork they were sending me is the required paperwork of the government, because vocational rehab is a federally funded government, like it's funded by the state of Iowa. So yeah, it's crappy paperwork that hasn't been changed probably in 50 years. Like it's just not functional for what people with disabilities need.
Sure. And I think having this conversation is what needs to happen so that the system can be exposed, so that people who are really looking out for your best interests and want to see you succeed can fully do their jobs, and not have to take the blame for the part that they can't control,
Yeah.
So Nathan, that might be something to think about. I don't know, as far as like paperwork formatting and those sorts of things, but I will say, government paperwork it's very complex. There's a lot of pieces to it. So going back to what we talked about earlier, when we talked about advocacy, making sure that an advocate is available to you is really important. So keep that in mind as well. So thanks for sharing that. So you're back to work, things are going well. I'm just curious, if there was anything that really stood out for you in your journey, what was probably the most memorable moment for you as you've gotten back into work?
I think like you said, I'm really proud of the Little White Schoolhouse business that I've started, and being 5 months in and getting a 4,500 square foot building. I think the moment that really stands out for me is I wrote a business plan. And in my business plan, it was my plan to be the only tutor at my business for a year, knowing that it was probably going to take a long time to get started. And in a month in, I was up to 10 teachers of people that wanted to join me and teach kids after they've taught school all day and come tutor with me. And I had my prior high school math teacher call me and say, I want in, I want to do this with you. And so now we're 5 months later and I have 21 teachers that work with me. And I think looking at the beauty that's happened, this is something, opening the Little White Schoolhouse is something I would have never, ever done had I not had a brain injury. I loved being in the classroom, having this new opportunity and being forced to go out of my comfort zone and open a business and be brave and take the risk I probably would have never done it prior to the brain injury. And I'm proud of that.
Yes. Nathan, what about you? Do you have what's a memorable moment for you, thinking about your journey getting back to work?
I would just say, just seeing the delight in the kids' face some days, and them they're getting things figured out for the first time. I mean, just any usual thing that a teacher would say, I guess. I love Megan's story. That's
like
given
your
me
story.
something I think I should do. Maybe I should start my own company and start some tutoring, and that'd be kind
I've
of
got
neat.
tips. I've got tips. You can
Yeah.
have the little white schoolhouse in Cedar Rapids.
That's
Like
an
a
hour away
franchise.
though. I don't want it in Cedar Rapids. It's got to be smaller town. So that's the problem where I live.
No, never a problem. I'm sure
Yeah.
it can happen it can happen. But I love that though, because as an educator, it is about the kids. And,
Mhm.
when you're going through the journey that you all are going through, it was baby steps. And then you made your way up to where you could start walking, and then you're walking faster. And now there's a trot, so it's that gradual process. But I think at the end of the day, it's about doing what you love. And both of you have a great story that shows that you're able to either get back to what you did or were doing, or you can take that and you can tweak that to fit your new life.
Yeah.
So I think that both points are very, very important here, just with the underlying theme of no matter what you go through, you can get to a space where you can fulfill whatever purpose is in your heart and mind right now. And so I think I love that from both of you, and you both had very different paths on how you got back to employment. So I think it's great. And I would love to know, when we're thinking about the case managers that you worked with or the staff that you worked with, if you could give them any advice when it comes to working with brain injury survivors, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say see the person first. See the person, not the injury. I think where my struggle was and where I really wanted help was, how do I deal with the mental health aspect of this? I'm consciously aware of where my injury is. I notice when my speech goes. I get frustrated and mad at myself where I forget things. And so I really struggled with the mental health aspect. Like, how was not, and I've said this before, how was pre-injury me not light years better than brain injury me? Like, I view my past self as better. I view my past self as stronger. I could go all day. I didn't have to take naps every day. I could do things independently. I could do the job I wanted to do, right? That version of me before the fall was better, not this injury, not post injury now with disabilities. And so there's a grieving process there. And so when you're looking at the person or the injury or the therapy, and you're supposed to follow this timeline, I just wanted someone to believe me that the mental health part needed to be addressed as well. And I requested multiple times for counseling, and it was denied because it's work comp, right? You're fine. You're fine. And so I would really advocate for the whole person. Look for the whole person, not the injury, and not what is the cheapest option to do.
Nathan, what about you?
So hard to follow Megan all the time. Jeez.
Well,
She does such a good job talking. I guess I would say it. Don't treat them less than what you normally would, I guess. Just kind of like what Megan was saying. Once in a while, people kind of try to make things easier for me or do things for me that they normally wouldn't have done. So I would just say something related to that.
Okay. Awesome. Those are both very powerful. So I'd like to conclude our conversation with this last question. If you could give any advice to other brain injury survivors that are looking for work or they're looking for a new career, what would you tell them? And Nathan, I'll start with you.
What I live by is attitude and effort. Just have a purpose, or give your life a purpose. Give everything in that's involved in you a purpose, and just have a feeling of involvement and wanting to be involved with other people and other things.
Hmm, that's
And
fantastic.
I would echo that. I ended up kind of deciding what my non-negotiables were going to be for my future. And for me, I wanted to be a good person, like kind, compassionate, loving. I wanted to be happy, meaning living a life of happiness, not of grief, not of depression, not of mental health struggles. And I wanted to make a difference. Those were the three non-negotiables that I said, no matter what I do post brain injury, this is what I'm saying. This is my choice. And I would encourage other brain injury survivors to decide what is the non-negotiable for the rest of your life and hold yourself to that. So for me, it was be a good person, be happy, and make a difference. Like those were my non-negotiables. And so once I made that choice of what exactly I wanted, I feel like all of my other decisions were much easier to make. Like I had a clear idea of where I needed to go.
Hmm. So at the end of the day, no matter what you go through, you get to choose.
Yeah.
And you get to be your best self, whatever that may look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can choose happiness even with a brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
And that's huge.
Yes.
You can choose to have a good life after your brain injury. And I think it is a choice though, and it's a hard choice not to live in your anger and to live in what you can't do. Like I will never get to ride a roller coaster again. No way.
Mm.
Brain injury roller coaster, and I love roller coasters. I can be angry about that, or I can be grateful that I can express myself well. Like so, it comes down to making a choice.
Yeah. And both of you all chose journeys that led you to seeing how your strength and resilience can lead you back to work, and working in a space that's best for you, regardless of where you are in that journey right now. And so I'm thankful for that. Megan, Nathan, thank you so much for an amazing conversation. I am looking forward to possible questions at the conclusion of this chat. And I hope you guys are ready for answering all of the questions that may be.
Sounds good. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you guys so much.